Howdy, folks. I'm Jeff,
And I'm John.
and we are the
The
J&J
J&J
Show.
Show.
This is Tools, Technology, and Training. We do have our training gown here, Kevin McCartney, and we really uh, want to share. At the beginning, it kind of shifted to brake fluid, and but we wanted him to share a little bit more about oils and
He had a great post on Facebook this week about oils.
it was funny because Brad asked him a question and Kevin said, I think I wrote that article.
Yeah, he did write that
And
article.
so, Kevin, tell us what you're going to, are you going to go ahead and share about oils or are you going to talk a bit more about brake
Well,
fluid?
I figured I'd stick with oil. We can always come back to brake fluid if we have some questions and stuff.
And we have it where he can share his screen, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, let me see if that works. Is that working?
Yep.
it
Yep.
is.
We got it on. Hello, my name is
Okay.
Kevin McCartney.
Okay,
The
let me
camera.
let me move on past that a little bit. I've been around forever. Um, I started just after we started making wheels out of wood.
We're not saying you're
Yeah,
old.
we've
Or-
had a lot of
Oh,
advancements since then. You know, the steel bands helped a whole bunch because those wooden wheels didn't hold up very well. When we started putting rubber on them, that was a big advancement. But one thing I'm going to talk to for the next few minutes here. A lot of you haven't seen it yet. 0W8 and 0W12 and 0W16 were all added as new segments of the 0W20 category in 2014. Most people don't understand that. They think those are nothing new. They've always been there or something like that. They don't realize 0W12 and 16 both would have been labeled 0W20 up until about 2014. So it's not quite as new as you might think. These are three examples here. BMW is the only one requiring a 0W12 so far, and it's a very exclusive one. Mazda, Mitsubishi, Nissan, Honda, and Toyota, and I'm missing another one in there somewhere, I think, are all using 0W8. The Toyota Crown is the most common vehicle that requires it, and we need to respect that requirement. We'll talk about that here in a minute. First, I think we got to kind of understand what these SAE ratings really mean, and there's a lot of big confusion on that. The non-W category includes 0W8, 12, 16, 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60. There has never been an SAE 10. There still isn't. Doesn't exist. There's a 10W, but not an SAE 10. 20W20 is a multi-grade oil that used to be pretty popular. So we need to kind of understand that. And then these are, I'm going to go through this pretty quick, but ASTM, the one of the international organizations that set standards and that kind of thing, their D445 kinematic viscosity test is what these ratings are based on. That's just the oil's ability to flow, has very little to do with its ability to protect. There's a separate requirement for all of these categories. It's ASTM D4683, and that's a high temperature, high shear dynamic viscosity, completely different deal. This kinematic viscosity is used for brake fluid. It's used for coolant. It's used for just about anything that has a viscosity that's important. But these are the standards, and we'll get back to that in a minute here. The SAW categories are 0W, 5W, 10W, 15W, 20W, and 25W. And they require completely different tests. And this has changed in all of our careers. There didn't used to even be a pumping requirement for this. There's just ASTM 5293 cranking viscosity. So all of these are fluid. What you think you remember being a 5W30 back 10, 20 years ago is not the same as a 5W30 today. They do change. Most of the time, we don't even notice that. This is kind of a chart of all these requirements put together. So if you meet 0W6, and I don't have a pointer on this, but you can see it on the chart at the top, and you also meet 20, then that oil qualifies as a 0W20. Again, 8, 12, and 16 did not exist until 2014. 20 was the lowest. And if you look at the numbers here, this is all looks like a bunch of alphabet soup. but if you spend some time with it and get some training on it, it starts to make sense. The 20 category used to go down all the way to 5.6, which included every 0W12, 16 today. So they have been around a long time. They were just labeled 0W20s. So that brings us back to a little more reality here, something we can apply. Traditionally, oil has protected the engine by forcing components separation. It's a lot like water skiing, or maybe a little more like a tire hydroplaning on the freeway. You get going fast enough, the tire climbs up on a wedge of water, separates it from the road. That's a bad thing when you're driving a car. It's a very good thing for a crankshaft or a camshaft or something like that. Keeps them separated, prevents them from even contacting each other, does a great job at reducing friction and wear. When that fails, and ultimately hydrodynamic protection does fail, we've got a boundary layer protection, which is kind of like moss growing on the rocks. If you know you're going to hit the rocks now and then, it's nice to have some moss growing or algae or something like that growing on the rocks to provide a little bit of protection. It does not prevent wear, it mitigates wear. That's where your additives like zinc phosphate, ZDDP, that kind of thing come in. They don't do as good a job as hydrodynamic protection, but they help to manage wear when hydrodynamic fails. Now with 0W8, for the first time, we've developed a whole new technology called film formers. Film formers have been around, but not this degree. And what they do is they create a very thick, robust protective film on the surfaces that cushions them. And if it's done properly, it is very slippery. It's just a great thing. And we'll get back to that here in a minute. I'm going to move along pretty quickly because I know we don't have a whole lot of time. So a lot of people are worried 0W8's got to be too thin. Without recent developments in lubrication, 0W8 is too thin. In fact, up until a couple of years ago, all the tests showed 0W8 would fail to protect and actually hurt fuel economy. People get real caught up on this fuel economy thing. Thinner fluids are not being used to meet fuel economy requirements primarily. That's a side benefit. On these new boosted GDI engines, the lower fluid viscosities are primarily to enhance cooling of the piston and piston rings. 0W8 does a great job of that. Anything thicker increases temperatures and increases the likelihood of extremely destructive, what we call mega knock. We'll get back to that in a minute here. So, yeah, 0W8 was way too thin until we developed these recent advancements. If you've been staying up to speed on fluids in the past, you know the rating systems, the ACEA and LSAC and API rating systems. For 0W8, those are all obsolete. Don't count anymore. They don't even try and approve it. JASO is the Japanese equivalent of SAE. They developed this new standard, the JASO GLV1 approval. That is the only important approval for 0W8. It either meets that or it doesn't. If it doesn't meet that, you don't want to use it at all, not even temporarily. You don't want anything to do with it. It includes a synergistic film former. It works in synergy with the detergents and film formers in the oil. It's a very, very sensitive balance. We don't want to screw with it. So it works in synergy with specific detergents. Got to use the correct detergent. Allows 0W8 to provide more than adequate protection. But it's got to use the right detergent. It's got to have the right blend. These detergents tend to, these calcium borate-based detergents can lead to a mega knock and LSPI, which can be pretty severe. I even got some pictures of that coming up. This, I'm using a bunch of big words here that always upsets people and scares the hell out of some of us, but I'm doing it for a reason. We need to be afraid of this stuff. We need to understand we don't understand it. It works really well, but if you screw with it, it's not going to work. So if you add your favorite oil supplement to this stuff, you're going to probably destroy the engine. If we deviate from the OEM requirements in these applications, it's going to be a problem. If we decide 0W8 is too thin and switch to a 0W20, we may overheat those pistons and rings and cause problems that way. So these engines are designed for this 0W8. We got to use it. It builds a very robust, thick protective layer like we talked about, instead of the water skiing effect of hydrodynamic lubrication. Potential problems if we don't stick strictly to the OEM recommendations, we could have that meganop that can quickly destroy an engine, and I mean catastrophically. I'll show you some pictures in a moment here. We don't want to use any of the supplements that we may have used before. Maybe it worked great for us. I'm not going to mention any brand names, but none of them would be appropriate, especially in a 0W8 or 0W12 application. Very sensitive to supplements. Filtration efficiency may be a problem. OEMs have typically used pretty loosey-goosey oil filter filtration efficiencies. Some of our favorite brands are really not very efficient, and the OEM brands tend to be among the worst on that. They have good build quality, good capacity, but the filtration efficiency for small particles is not good. That may be a problem with 0W8 because of the film former. It's a different type of protection, may need better filtration. And I'm going to jump ahead here in a minute and kind of open this up for question. I'm going to close out the screen, but since this is interrelated to Meganock, we need to understand. I put this up on Facebook here earlier today, actually, because I was looking at it and thinking of using it here. But Meganock is not prevented by any of the things we used to think were related to pre-ignition. Retarding timing doesn't matter. It's more likely to occur at lower engine temperatures, not piston temperatures, but lower engine temperatures. Higher octane does not help one bit. This is all about the type of detergent and supplements used in the oil. Using the wrong supplement can destroy the engine through Meganock. So I'm just kind of going to use that as a teaser. This is the kind of damage we're talking about preventing. There's a close-up of that piston. There's a bent rod. These are all from Meganock. There's another one there. And then, because I know we're about to run out of time here, we were talking about reading labels on products. This is back to brake fluid real quick, but we can see on this Castrol brake fluid, I'm not condemning Castrol, they just happen to have a good example of this. It shows their FMVS, that stands for Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard 116. That is a meaningless standard today. FMVS SS does not meet the minimum requirements for any car made today. But that term .3 and .4 are widely known and used, so Castrol uses that in their advertising. ISO 4925 has 7 different classes of fluid. Class 4 is the minimum we should be using, and this just barely meets that. In fact, it doesn't meet the SAE standard for .4. If it did, instead of saying SAE J1703 here, it would say J1704. So this does not even meet the industry standard for .4. This other one, another product, and I'll show you who that's from here. Let me advance that ahead, and then I'll back it up again. But if we read that one carefully, on the front, it says .4 brake fluid. If we read on the back, it says specifically compounded preparation designed expressly for use where .4 brake fluid is recommended. It doesn't actually say it's approved, does it? Nope. And then it says exceeds Federal Motor Vehicle Standard 116 for .3 and meets SAE J1703 specs. This does not even meet .4 specs, but it's being referenced to .4, so you think it's .4 approved. This should not be used in any modern automobile at all, period. The Castrol, and both of these actually, because both of them meet 1703. Well, you could use it in a .3 application, but that's it. No .4 applications. And we see there.
And it's racing.
Their reference. Go ahead.
It's racing approved.
Yeah. It's more gooder too.
Yeah.
But you don't want to use it in your car.
My favorite word.
More gooder?
Yes, sir. I like more gooder.
Yep. Every year with new model introductions, somebody is changing the oil requirements for their car, and somebody's got to make oil that meets that standard. 40 and 30,
Yeah.
you notice it's listed twice. 30 is listed twice, 40 is listed twice. If it's an ACEA A5 or A1 and a bunch of other approvals, then it's the top column and it's only a 2.9 centipoise high temperature, high shear viscosity. But if it is an ACEA A3 or A4 or a many, not all, but some of the BMW and Mercedes and Volkswagen approvals, then it's the 3.5. So essentially, some 30 weights are about as thin as a 20 weight. Others are thicker than a 40 weight is required to be. And then when you go down here in the W categories, GM and Ford and a bunch of others have all set different standards for what 0W, 5W, and 10W mean to them. So if you've got a Ford approved 5W30, it is much thinner at lower temperatures than other 5W30s. So how much do we really know about oil?
Not as much as you. And so how would we know that? So we would go and put the specific.
Well, I do a
on the
16-hour train the trainer class. It's 16 hours on nothing but oil. Haven't done it in a while. I do a 3 to 4 hour oil presentation for shop owners, service advisors, and technicians. And many of the people that go to that class repeat the class, come back in a couple of years and do it again.
Will you be at any of the big trade shows doing these classes?
No, I used to do them at all the big trade shows,
Right.
but now they're kind of dominated by sponsors. And the sponsors want to sponsor something that makes them money. So I've kind of given up on that.
There you go.
I'm willing to do it, but there's low enough demand for it, and I'm busy doing a lot of other stuff that I don't update my handouts or anything like that unless I see a demand and a reason to do it. So
what do we do? I mean, so do we call you? I mean,
no, you go to your service information system, All Data Mitchell or OEM, whatever it is, and you look for what's required for that car.
Well, Kevin, we so much appreciate your joining us because you are the expert. As you were telling Brad, I probably wrote that article. You have so much knowledge. I'm always so impressed, and it's like sometimes if we put too much, we get to overload content. But the deal is for these guys to start thinking about: are we putting in the right oil? Are we putting in the right filters? And it's even more important on the ones that require the 08 and the 012. Kevin, I so much appreciate, and just like John was saying, Kevin is not someone that's available just out at the trade shows. Most of his is chain store, chain operations that we know he goes to and teaches, the all day classes. And then like you were saying, 12-hour classes or whatever. Oh my gosh. Kevin, thank you so much for taking time, when we reach out to you, and courteous enough to come on and share. And as always,
Bless you, folks.
we appreciate you watching.